Hello and welcome to Colin Bradley Artcast. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
How's everyone doing today? I am clearly in a different place of the house.
Mhm.
People would notice straight away. And I'll tell you why. It's because it's raining outside and the cabin is lovely. And it is lovely when it's raining. But you would be constantly hearing the sound of rain hitting the roof.
I can
And
imagine.
that would be quite distracting. It's very lovely and very therapeutic when you're in there because it's
I imagine that because rain is a very it's a very nice thing to have as a background noise, isn't it? Rain, especially if you're dropping off to sleep or relaxing, meditation even. I know it works very well. But I agree, it could be very annoying when you're trying to talk through, especially if it's an intermittent rain. You get heavy and then it's light. It's
yeah,
distracting in that case.
it would be a bit distracting. So I'm indoors. You can actually see one of my pictures, not one of yours,
Yes.
one of mine.
Yes, that's right, and very good it was too. And I'm sure people will look at that and think, "Oh,
It's
what
all
was
right from a distance. It's all right from a distance. You don't want to get up close. I haven't done many pastel pencil pictures, but there you go. That was good enough to pop on the wall, even though it's terribly framed. You can see I
yes,
haven't I
yes, you're not
haven't framed
hang
it
it to the
properly.
wall. No, never mind.
But there you go. There you go. How are you doing, Dad? You sound like you got a bit of a
Well,
cold.
I've got a bit of a cold, yes. Fortunately, it's not really giving me any problems at all, except my voice is a little bit, you know, coldy. But otherwise, no, fine. Otherwise, I'm fine. Things are progressing here. We've still got a lot of work being done, and we're getting to a stage now when painting's being done. So it's the kind of icing on the cake, really. Now all the preliminary work's been done. As you know, Steve, we've got a lot of work being done. The whole of the ground floor is being renovated. We got the kitchen going in, and we've got a kind of a bedroomish going in. That's a bedroom come lounge, having a put you up bed. And then we've got when people see me in a few weeks' time, I should be downstairs in the computer area, which is the corridor area. So I'll have a change of scene then. And then we've got a kitchen, and we've got a shower, and the toilets going in the extension area. It's a lot of work involved, and a lot of work being done, but it's going to look great. It already is, all the foundations and all the preliminary work that's been done is well on its way now. So you can actually see it. You can see what it's going to look like. So just the trimmings to go, but about 2 or 3 more weeks, and it'll all be done. So
Lovely.
yes, I'm thrilled with it.
Well, many years ago, that was the gallery. Long
That's
time
right.
ago,
That's
that
right.
was your art gallery because it has that shop front that is it's still it's not a shop front. It looks like a shop front in the shape of it, but it's not used as a shop front.
Mm,
Um,
well, I think I probably mentioned this to you, but your mum and I were talking about perhaps changing the shop front, to more traditional housey, look like a house flat instead of having the windows like they are on the shop door way. But I resisted that. I said, no, it's a memory that I would treasure because we loved the gallery and it was fantastic. So we lived with it for 40 years. And I said, no, I'm not going to change it. So we've got kind of two alcoves now that we're going to use anyway.
mm,
So it's very much the same shape, but obviously a completely different function.
yeah, absolutely. Lovely. Okay. Well, as I mentioned last week, we're going to answer some questions and cover some theory on this week's episode as we do collect and reply to people's questions that come in. And occasionally we reserve some, put some to one side as we think that, oh, this might be a nice talking point. It might be lovely to give the same information on a podcast as well as in an email back to the person that has emailed. So the first one I'm going to talk about here is a query regarding some PanPastel projects. So Dan emails and says, I hope this note finds you both well. I was wondering if there are any more PanPastel projects in the works. I've completed all of the tutorials with the exception of the Kestrel project, and I had a blast with every one of them. I really enjoy Colin's approach to using PanPastels. He has quite a unique style that I find very pleasing. So what do you think, Dad? You might do some...
Mm. Oh yes, yes. I will. I will do more. Um, uh, in the foreseeable future, that's in the next, certainly this side of Christmas and just after Christmas. No, there's no plans. But in the new year, yes. And what I'd like to do, Steve, is that something a little bigger. I've done the. Generally speaking, I was working quite small, as you know, and but now I want to make it bigger. I want to branch out a little bit now, using PanPastel and soft pastel. Now, I haven't combined those two together, but I think they would work very well together, especially in the impressionistic range. I've um, I've got a hankering to experiment really in the impressionism. So
Mm.
that's going to
Well,
be very interesting for me, and I'm sure for everybody. It's not
mm.
to satisfy the people that like the detail, but I think with impressionism will come other things like if people practice that, they'll see how my background, which as you know is very impressionistic, and so I think that we've got scope there to do that, and that's coming.
It's interesting because Dan also goes on to talk about he's going to try some of the masterclass projects, like the poppies fields and things with the
That's
pans,
right.
pastels, as well as the
Yes.
pencils. Um, is that something you would look at playing with, some sort of
Uh,
those kinds of era and styles of pictures?
no, no. I've done that, and I've done a couple of still lifes, as you know. They came out very well, and Manet and other pictures that I've done, they come out very well. But they're other people's pictures, and what I really want to do is my own. I want to take something probably from maybe a Pixabay picture or photograph, should I say, and then turn that into a an impressionistic picture. That's what I'd like to do. I can do it, and it's just a matter of application, really, getting the finger out.
Lovely. Well, that is exciting. I'm sure everyone will be itching to see those experiments that you do. I'm certainly interested in seeing
Mm.
how you get on with those. But thanks, Dan, for the question. A lovely email. Thank you. Um, so moving on, and I actually don't have this person's name, so apologies for this. But I do have your comment from YouTube that we thought we might talk about. So this person has commented on one of your videos and says to create a picture like that with pastel pencils is amazing. I'm in the United States and we've just bought a set of what looks to be the same type of white pencils on Amazon. I don't know if it's the same type that you have, but I only use pastel pencils for adult colouring. I don't create my own art.
All right.
I do use Carbothello pastels sometimes. I don't know if they're different than the ones you use, but I certainly cannot colour with them straight from the pencil. And I bet
Well,
a lot of people
just
find
do
this.
with the white pencil. That's a general. It's got it on it. It's got general white pencil. Um, they're the ones I use. They're the ones I like. I haven't used others, so I can't. I don't know. They'll have to find out for themselves whether it works. The general I found works extremely well with the all the pastel pencils, Carbothello. Um, I use it really, to be honest, just for highlighting. If I want a bright highlight, I used to use soft pastel for that. But I tend to use, if I'm doing detail work particularly, it's not so easy to get the soft pastel to react in a detailed area. So I would tend to use then the general white pencil. I've got a few of them. I managed to get a few there, but I don't use them all the time. And I certainly would. prefer to use the pastel pencil. Coming back to Carpathello, you said, didn't you? Well, I used to use Carpathello, and I, for quite a few years, probably about 4 or 5 years, I was solely Carpathello. And then I switched to Faber-Castell, but I still use Carpathello. I use Carpathello, Gretacolor, and Faber-Castell, and Caran d'Ache. All four, and very, as you know, and people will know, that I can combine them very well. So you can do wonders with Carpathello.
Mm. What's interesting, and I think a lot of people probably have the same struggles, is if they haven't come across someone like you with the tutorials,
Mm,
um, you wouldn't necessarily know how to apply them successfully,
no.
because this I think it's a lady, I'm sure it was because I
Mm,
remember the name, but they go on to say, I find them scratchy and either end up rubbing them on a piece of paper or scraping some off and then either using a makeup brush
mm.
or a cotton ball or a Q-tip. I suppose because it's not that traditional colouring pencil texture that people would be more familiar with, you would be a bit unsure of how you applied the pastel because it's
I have
dusty.
sympathy with it, and I can understand where they're coming from. I've seen quite a lot of work being done, and I know what they're doing wrong, but I can't express it. But I will hear what they're doing wrong is they don't give it chance. When you put a colour on, we work from light to dark. Everybody knows that. And I find we had a comment recently that I can't remember, somebody did something that worked from dark to light and realised that they'd made a mistake. I had to start again, working from light to dark, and of course it works out. So it's, I know some artists do work the other way. They work from dark to light, but I don't, and I've found that it's very successful. Now, what happens there is you choose your lighter, softer colours, right, to start with. White, ivory, grey, all these colours, they go on, usually they go on first, and then they're blended in with either your finger or continuing with the pencil to make sure you fill the tooth of the paper. If you don't fill the tooth of the paper, that's when you get scratchy. And I've seen it so many times. Um, Once that's done, then, and you've got your base colour, then you can then start using the stronger tones. And as you know, and if people have seen so much of my work now, they must realise that that is the way that you get the success with it. Well, I do anyway, and we know that the members do as well. You can't deviate from that. You can't just scratch it on and say, "Oh, that'll do." It doesn't work like that. There's more to it, especially in the portrait work. If you're doing human portraits, you do need to fill the paper. Now, coming to papers, there's different kinds of papers. There's the ombre paper, which I like, and I think works very well, and I used that for years. And didn't like the Canson Meton paper because it's got little pits in it. Now, I know people argue, well, yes, but ombre has got lines in it, so you have to fill that up. And that's true. But they're easier to use than Pastomat. Pastomat and UART paper, you would find that quite hard if you were starting out because it doesn't, you need more pastel and you need to work the pastel into the paper before you can really achieve anything. However, once you do that and you're successful at using those paper in the way I've just explained, then magic happens, and it's a far, far better result. But it takes time and it takes practice, really.
There's
Have I answered
also,
your question?
yeah, I think what's interesting about the pastel pencils is that what people might not know when they first get them is that it feels like there's almost a delicateness that needs to be applied when using them because it is a different, whereas colored pencils, I feel like people might just could be a bit more gun ho with the application.
That's
But with
right.
pastel
That's
pencils, they are a bit more brittle, the pigment and the makeup of it. So there is a delicateness that needs to apply, which people wouldn't necessarily, delicate just doesn't mean you don't apply pressure. You can apply pressure, but it's approaching it with a delicate approach, if that doesn't make sense. But you understand where I'm going with that.
it's a question of patience, really, Steve. You've got to be patient. You can't just expect to scratch, 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 scratch. That's it. I've done it. You can't do it like that. A very good friend of mine who did go to art school, he says repeatedly to me when he sees my work, I don't know how you do it. I would not have the patience to do what you do. I don't. I don't understand that from my point of view because I thoroughly enjoy, actually applying and building up the colours. But he wouldn't be able to do that. He hasn't got that. Just hasn't got the patience to wait and be prepared to take the time to build it up. But
I
I don't think
suppose
it takes very long to do that. And people, when they see my work, or me working, they realise, gosh, you're doing that quite quickly. It's only because I've got experience and I know what's going to happen next. But I totally understand it. If you've got paint, you see, if you've got paint, whether you're acrylic or not so much watercolour, but acrylic and oil, you just put the colour on, you mix the colour up and stick it on, and there it is. You don't have to do anything else. That's it. And then you move on to the next bit, next bit, next bit, next bit. I don't think that's the correct way of doing it anyway, but I know people that do that. But pastel pencils is a different kettle of fish altogether. You've got to be patient. You've got to be experienced on your applications, and it takes time. But once you learn that, once you get the idea, gosh, the world opens up for you. As we
I,
know, so many examples of that on our members' site. Beautiful work that's been done.
I suppose that's why it can be such a meditative process, is it? Because it forces you to slow down. It forces you to take your time when you're applying it,
Mm.
in order to have that kind of full satisfaction, and it because of the nature of the medium slowing you down, it allows you to feel more meditative,
Mm.
and calmer, maybe, and as you say, more patient when you're doing your art. So
Yes, it all comes down to that. See, being patient and enjoying it. If you enjoy it, I enjoy the process. And those flowers I showed you last week, I thought that was going to take a long time, but it actually didn't. It's quite quick. Because once you put, if you're doing a white flower with some pinks and mauves in it, you just put the white on first, maybe a little bit of grey, and that starts to build up. And then you can start to see it, and then put a little bit of pink in, and before you know where you are, you've got a flower there. It is quite quick. I think it's quick, but people looking at that, oh God, I can't do that. I haven't got the time. I haven't got. There you go.
lovely. Well, thank you so much for the comment. As I say, I made the mistake. I didn't actually put down their username from YouTube, but thank you again if you're watching this, for your comment. Again, these are going back, so I don't have the name for this one. But someone asked about stripes specifically on a ginger cat. So if that is you, please comment below because I didn't write your name down. But they asked specifically if we could discuss about doing stripes on a ginger cat, and I thought that would be something interesting because I imagine that is kind of a similar
Mm.
approach to, say, a tiger or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, a mistake a lot of people make is that they don't understand complementary colours, and they don't understand the harmony that you have to create. It comes automatically when you get to the point where I am now, or have been for many years now. When you understand the colours, you understand the pencils, but you get two colours that don't work together, but they look right. on the photographic reference. That doesn't often work that way, especially in the case of a ginger, which is a very, very difficult one to. I did do a ginger cat, didn't I, recently? So that's a good one to perhaps look at and see how I actually did that. Because I have to think, ginger is one of those colours that doesn't just, you don't have a ginger pencil, for instance. So you've got to make that ginger colour with the 186 and 187 and the orange, usually, a combination of those colour. But if I got a picture like that to start with, I would work on on spare paper to start with and get the colours right. But you've also got the light colour as well. And that light colour, if you just put white on, for instance, and then you put the 187, 186 and a little bit of orange as a stripe, it won't work. And the reason it won't work is there's no compatibility between that light stripe and the orange. So what you have to do is colour the white with maybe a cream or ivory would be ideal in a situation like that. And you think of ivory, 186, 187. I hope people understand this. Probably if they haven't tried it before, I don't know what I'm talking about. But these are two ochre, orangey ochre colours. And if you put the ivory first, then you get that link between the white and the orange, or the 187. But if you put 187 directly on it, that doesn't work on its own. You've got to have something backing it up. In other words, you've got to have a link colour, a colour that links the two together. Now I've used that as an example, white, ivory, and 186, 187. I've used that just as an example, but there's probably more to it than that. But it just gives a simplistic answer to those gingery problems that you're going to have. And
Interesting.
also, I did on that ginger cat, I would use other colours as well. I'd go into Cretacolor and possibly Carbothello. It sometimes works if you've got a larger range of pencils, then you've got a larger opportunity to find the right colour. But all the time, even though I've got those colours, I still find it quite tricky, and I have to compromise very often from the photographic reference. I have to compromise it. I don't know whether I answered the question, but that certainly is the key to it, is not to have foreign colours that aren't compatible together, because that's when you get the harsh and you get an unnatural look. You've got to get those. You've got to find a colour. Ivory is a good one in this particular instance that give you the link between the two.
It's interesting, and actually, it's prompted another question from me. I've got a question for you. You kind of mastered the Faber-Castell range because you used that range for creating all of your tutorials and all of your packs,
Yeah.
and stuck to that range for the student to be able to kickstart their journey.
Mm-hmm.
Did it almost not set you back, but throw a bit of a spanner in the works when you introduced all of these other ranges because you'd mastered those colours so much
Mm.
that you were now presented with another 300 or 400 pencils?
Yes.
Did it throw up a spanner in the works?
No, not at all. It was a wonderful present for me when you said I'd like to include Carbothello, and then I think it was Cretacolor we went first, and we went Faber, Cretacolor, then Carbothello, because you wanted to increase the range. Well, I was all for that because that gives me an extra range of pencils. But people will know that I usually go and reach for my Faber-Castell first. They're the first colours. I go through them, and I find the colours that I think would be best suited to the particular picture I'm using. Then I would then go through my Cretacolor. This is usually how I do it. And then I pick colours there that maybe give me half tones, and very often a better colour than the one I picked for with the Faber. anyway, I go through them, and then once I put those to one side, I then go through Carpathello and find one or two. One typical example of this is, do you remember, I think it was last week or the week before, I was talking about 330. I think it was last week because we were talking about the flowers. I said 330, didn't I? And I kept saying 330. Well, there isn't a colour like that in any of the other ranges. There's similar ones, but not exactly the same as that. That was Carpathello. So I had to wait until I got through the Faber, through the Gretacolor, into Carpathello, and wait a minute, that's the one I want. See, so that's how it goes. And then finally, I usually go into Caran d'Ache as well and pick a few of those if I want to. So no, it didn't faze me at all when you said, all these colours. But that's the process that I use. I start with my base set, which is going to be Faber. Pick out the ones that I think are best suited to the image, and then go through the other colours, finding half tones or an alternative.
Lovely. Interesting. What a lovely little insight. Excellent. Okay, well, we'll leave it there for this week. Some really lovely questions. Thanks, Dad, for offering your expertise and advice. If anyone wants to email us or get in touch with us, comment on this video, get in touch and send us your questions if there's anything that you would like us to talk about in a future episode. In the meantime, we'll be back next week, potentially with another picture. We'll see how the work's going in your place, Dad, to see if you're able to get back into the studio. But yeah, either way, we'll aim to be back next week with some new content for you.
It depends on the workload, Steve, because I can't work with noise going on in the background, even if it's a little drill. I can't work that. It's distracting for me, and it doesn't come across very well on the video either. So I've got to be careful. So I've had to curtail it for this week completely. I can't get to it. But it'll come back. So we'll have to see. If I haven't done anything, I'll have to talk about more questions. I'm sure you've got plenty up there that we can discuss. I think it's important though, because although it's nice talking about the pictures, it really is nice to perhaps answer questions that may be in people's minds, and they go, I wish you could talk about this, or I wish you could talk about that, because there's so much to talk about, isn't there?
Absolutely. Lovely. Well, we hope you've all enjoyed this one. We'll leave it there for this week. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
Enjoy your
week. Got it right that time, matey.
I think so. I think last week was the first time that it was in time.
It was my fault, you see, because when I say I'm Colin Bradley, and I go in too quickly with enjoy your week, but I'm giving it a pause or two now.
We got our timings right. However, 2 months in or whatever.
I was dying to cough then. I couldn't cough. I had to smother it. Don't cough, don't cough, don't cough. Don't sneeze, don't cough.